Well, hello again. My name is still Mayleets, only this time my hair is blonde, but also brown, because I'm the queen of laziness. But lo, there was a time that you might remember when my hair was pink, and I did a video about the most disturbing movies Iceberg. The thing we learned on the most disturbing movies Iceberg was that most of them weren't even movies. Many of them did not even strike the bare minimum of being a film. This is a big shame because, I actually think the idea of a horror movie Iceberg would be really cool. It's just a shame that the majority of it ends up being really bad shit people don't need to ever see. And speaking of really bad shit that people need to never see, I have decided to take all parts of my disturbing movies Iceberg, which was very popular. I think it was the most popular thing I ever made, actually. I'm gonna put them all into one video, which is the video right now that you're watching, only I'm giving it a brand spanking new intro. Hi, again, it's still me, and as you can see, the only thing that's improved is my budding confidence. The thought occurred to me that I could use this as an opportunity to maybe issue a few little corrections about things that I fucked up in the prior video. Listen, we're all human. Googling this stuff kinda got really fucking difficult. I'm not gonna lie to you. A lot of the stuff that I had to see for this Iceberg still has traumatized me. Specifically some videos at the end of it. Googling things became taxing near the end, and there were a couple moments where I reached out to friends to ask for some answers as to what the fuck X thing was so that I didn't have to go digging. It turns out what I really should have done is gone ahead and took the trauma, took the L, and learned what the fuck I was talking about. So I've decided to issue some new corrections to the prior Iceberg before we get started. The first thing being that I said that the Bjork stalker entered Bjork's home. This did not happen. I also said that Bjork was dating Dennis Rodman. Where did I come up with this? She was dating Goldie at the time. So when you get to these parts in the video, just edit me in here in your mind saying these things, I suppose. Throughout this video, I discuss the porn-to-snuff pipeline is a thing that I refer to, which is to say that oftentimes something will start off as porn, and then over the course of time and tricks and bullshit turns into snuff, and then people realize what they're getting into, and then they get really super fucked up by it. I think that the idea of this narrative is cute, but I also know that having personally done sex work in my life, it doesn't always lead you to snuff. Matter of fact, it usually does not. This is a myth. That is why I bring it up on the Iceberg, more or less. It's not to say that it's real, that if you go out and do porn, you're going to end up in a snuff film. This is obviously absurd. Two things are very true. Number one is we need to document and make journalism of the things that do actually exist that people make for money or for attention or for whatever reason. And B, we need to defeat this narrative. If you make porn, you're one day going to make a snuff film, which is absolutely untrue, and no one does that. My opinion on bringing up specifically the dark side of porn, which is the documentary that I speak on, is to bring up how the porn-to-snuff pipeline is a weird cultural myth that people think exists, but doesn't necessarily actually exist, even if you can buy really awful things, even if snuff films maybe do or maybe don't exist, depending on who you ask and what their definition is. Understand that while those things are very funded, people put money into making those things, that doesn't necessarily mean they have anything whatsoever to do with pornography. So they're kind of grasping at straws. Just because a lot of people who have done porn have also done other things that exploited them for money has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that they did porn, which is fine. If you would like to do some porn, I'm not going to be upset with you whatsoever. However, talking about things that are really bad, this is something that I did not mention on the Iceberg, but I'm going to mention here. There's this video called Daisy's Destruction. When I made this Iceberg video, it was a rumor, it was a myth that this thing existed, so people didn't really want to talk about its existence. But since Josh Duggar has basically gotten his entire life ruined, which is hilarious, he has absolutely accidentally revealed that many of the mythical internet videos that people thought were real, that were horrible, were actually real and were on his hard drive. Apparently it took the FBI 3 or 4 attempts to even look through the computer because everything that was so awful on that was so deeply psychologically affecting to anybody that tried to look at it for evidence that they would have to take some sort of leave. Know that I would like this to somewhat be permanently tied together, but the idea is that sometimes these wealthy fucks have an accidental tendency to reveal that these awful internet things are actually real. And I don't like that either. Okay, the next thing I mentioned is literally just something I was too stupid to notice. So the KT trilogy is literally, it's a guy's name, and I'm not gonna attempt to pronounce it because I will do it wrong because I am from Texas, a land known for its stupidity. It's just this guy's 3 movies about death. There's like Junk Films, Orzoka, I can't remember the other one, but they're just these 3 movies about death. So it's not anything that isn't already on the list, it's just a way you can access all 3 of them in one kind of bundle. And isn't that nice? And the last thing I want to talk about is something that people brought up because they felt that I had talked about it prior and I didn't want to include it on this Iceberg. And I guess I believe strongly that a horror movie Iceberg should probably consist of majority horror movies. So I don't really like to suggest things that are like faux documentary pseudo snuff garbage, especially having anything to do whatsoever with animals. So I did not mention dog dick whatsoever on this Iceberg. However, I guess I'll mention it now, but only to say that it is not a horror film, nor is it a film. And since I made my video about dog dick, some publication has somewhat gotten out about this particular phenomenon, and stores have been shut down over it. I'm not necessarily saying that anything that I've ever done has affected any kind of change, because again, I am just an internet dork. But I take a lot of the things that I see and feel and hear, especially on this list, very seriously. For instance, I am now going to reveal that when Googling for this, I developed a trauma because I saw someone's face get hit with a brick in a moving car. And it was really traumatizing and genuinely upsetting, and it was on my television, and there was nothing I could do about it. So because of this, I have included absolutely no clips. I've included absolutely no graphic images that would shock or make you horrified. I am merely describing in this video the things that I have seen in relation to the titles. You don't need to see this stuff to know that it exists, and you don't need to see this stuff to do something about it. It might just be one of those jobs for the FBI, but let me tell you what, the people on the internet sure do not like it when you upload murder videos, and they will go the fuck after you. So with that, I have removed the ending bumpers, but this is all like 2.5 hours or however long of my Disturbing Movies Iceberg, and I genuinely hope you enjoy. Before you go though, I have written a dirty book. This book is very similar, I think, in nature to a lot of the things that you would find on this Iceberg, almost intentionally so. I find that talking about this right now is kind of perfect because this book is very much a product of me making these 3 videos. In learning about all of this stuff, I deeply warped my sense of like what people were out there doing in a moral capacity, imagining the kinds of people that are deeply affected by this in the same way that I am, and that's what led me to write the book Fluids, which is the one that I'm holding. As much as you might think so, I am not ashamed of this book. It is $16 and it is on my Bandcamp. There is a link below if you would like to check it out, and hopefully maybe you too will think that it is as bad as something on this list. You will give me accolades for doing so, even though I was literally just trying to process my own personal trauma. And with that, enjoy the Disturbing Movies Iceberg again. You are a human being on Earth, which means you've probably seen an image that looks kind of like this. This is what the kids are calling an iceberg, because it's a fucking iceberg. Either way, this format is beginning to grow in popularity very, very quickly as a way to talk about increasingly niche or difficult aspects of already pre-established cultures. You know how there's like top 10 videos? Well, it's kind of like a top 10 video, but things escalate and get worse. So there's a video going around by a YouTuber named Wendigoon, which is about the disturbing movies iceberg, which is basically this horrifying thing. It's this thing here that someone made because they hate me in specific and want me to suffer. So I watched through a few of Wendigoon's videos, and while Wendigoon is very willing to go to the dark places, and I appreciate that about Wendigoon, I also am very aware that Wendigoon seems to have not seen a lot of the worst stuff. He seems to have protected himself from these horrible things. So while I was sitting there watching his video, I was thinking, geez, it would be really great if someone made this video that was like, you know, like a psychopath, like myself. So I did say very clearly, outwardly, that I would no longer be talking about fucked up movies on YouTube.
Oh no, my brains.
But oh boy, this right here is something that I just feel like I have a unique place on the internet to talk about, because I know everything about this shit. Now, this might be broken up into multiple parts because it's gonna take a while to explain, and also, while other people are not so willing to put their channel at risk by putting like clips and graphic depictions of the things in the films in the videos, I'll do it. I sure will. Now, also, I'm gonna quickly address that the bottom of the list has some things in it that no one should have seen, many of which are illegal. So if you're looking to see the things at the bottom of the list, might I recommend don't doing that. Try to not do it. If you cannot, that would be fantastic. So today, we are going to begin the Herculean task of analyzing the disturbing movies Iceberg, adding my own film choices to it that are not on there, because I know about a lot of things that just didn't end up here. What a shame. I can fill in those gaps. I hate that I have to preface this so much, but hear me out here. Warning on content. Some of this stuff is like stuff you can't unthink about, but I'm okay. So, you know,
Oh no, my brains.
believe in yourself. Know your own limits. I believe that people can handle this information. I am also a psychopath. Alright, so now I'm getting really serious. This is your last fucking chance. This stuff here is super bad. There's this book called The Conspiracy Against the Human Race by Thomas Ligotti, and it's about how consciousness itself is evil and is trying to kill us from the inside. And if there's anything I've ever seen that is demonstrable proof that that's true, it's this fucking iceberg. You have now been really warned. Alright, so let's take a look at this son of a bitch. Let's see what we got. So the first rung of the iceberg is admittedly, I don't even know. I feel like the early Iceberg stuff is always like, do you like horror movies? Well, here's some general horror movies that you might like, and if you want to go crazier from there, you go crazier from there. But so if it ends crazy, it has to start normal. So unfortunately, these are like the really, really normal movies. Friday the 13th. Prior to Jason, as everybody knows, Jason's mother killed a lot of people in the first perspective, and they were mostly having sex, and that was documented in the feature film Friday the 13th. It's not that great. I don't really like it all that much. I think there are better things on the list. Child's Play. Okay, genuinely, I don't even understand how this qualifies as a disturbing movie. If you were to call this a disturbing movie, you would have to have smoked some crack. Basically, a doll comes alive and becomes a Chucky. This is the Chucky. It's so simple. A killer doll movie. You know, it's scary, I guess, if you're a child. You know, I forget sometimes that some people watch these movies and are genuinely scared of everything. Like any horror movie, like any inch, it bothers them. So this list, truly, and also I guess my YouTube channel in general, is just based, it's like a gift given to the people in the world that's not enough for them. You gotta have a lot crazier shit for me than that. Scream is directed by Wes Craven. It's actually kind of hilarious. I think Matthew Lillard, a tad far, but I love that he goes a tad far. He goes like way too far, to be honest. It's so 90s, and it's also so meta-referential. I don't even know if I love a lot of the messaging, but I have seen it many times, and it is not scary. Insidious. Okay, so this is directed by James Wan. It's like the movie that was like a big deal that he made after Saw. Well, he also made Dead Silence, but a lot of people want to forget about that. A lot of people like that movie. I don't know. It depends on how much you like puppets. Speaking of puppets, there's a lot of fucking puppets in Insidious. Insidious is to be honest with you, it's more of a throwback William Castle movie than anything. It's almost making fun of the genre that it's in. I think that's kind of James Cameron. I did it. I did the fucking thing. I said James Cameron instead of James Wan. Fuck me. I think the thing that James Wan is like mostly known for is kind of taking the horror genre and turning it into a small, weird nuclear weapon. What I would call is like the Fast and Furiousing of horror movies. There's not a lot of subtlety in Insidious. It's just kind of an aggressive haunted house movie. And speaking of aggressive haunted house movies, we've got The Conjuring, which is another aggressive haunted house movie. Perhaps religious propaganda? When are people gonna have that conversation? Listen, we all stand Ed and Lorraine Warren, but, like, I have a feeling deep in me, somewhere, that maybe they had a bad take about something. Annabelle. Alright, so clearly the person who made this list saw the Conjuring universe and was like, this is the kind of horror movies that, like, normies watch. I can't imagine normies really vibing with Annabelle, really. I mean, Annabelle is the offshoot of The Conjuring that I don't know if I guess it was successful. Nothing in Annabelle is even close to what's in Insidious or The Conjuring, and it's not directed by James Wan, and it's very noticeable. To be honest with you, I don't even know why this movie is on this list. It's a bad movie. The second one's okay, but that first one it's stinky. The Grudge. Okay, so when I was a child, I will admit that this was the first movie I ever saw that made me feel like I was hopeless and going to die alone. Which is great. I mean, I think every child is looking for that experience, right? That's why we're here. That's why we're on this YouTube channel, to experience that. So I saw The Grudge with my sister in a theater when I was like 12 years old or 13. Fucked me up. Oh my god, the ghosts in it are genuinely pretty fucking horrifying, even still. So earlier I said that James Wan kind of ushered in this Fast and Furiousing of horror movies. I do kind of think it started with Sam Raimi's influence on the Ji-Wan remake, which is The Grudge. I feel like Ji-Wan is very subtle. The Grudge is very aggressive. Is that Sam Raimi influence? Perhaps. Who knows? All I know is I think this is part of why horror movies are like this now. Why we all have to go back for a harder and harder hit every time for the exact same feeling. The Ring. Okay, so The Ring is just a genuinely good movie. Like, it's very subtle. It's Gore Verbinski. It's a remake of Ringu, which I pronounced badly because I am from Texas. The Ring is pretty sweet. I actually love Naomi Watts in that movie. I just like Naomi Watts in general. She's just a good lady. But also, there's that scene where the horse thing happens, and that shit sucks. The reason this is on this list is most people have a big old problem with this. The fucking closet thing, people don't like that. People don't like the when the guy turns around, his face all fucked. They don't like that the face gets fucked up. People don't like it when their faces get fucked up. But I got terrible news for you, sister. Everybody's face is gonna get fucked up with time. Do you think the dirt is gonna spare your beautiful face? Okay, so I put these on as a joke. The joke is over. A Nightmare on Elm Street. So it's not that freaky of a thing. Like, I even feel like it's insulting to call this normie, but I also feel like it's not insulting to call this normie. I guess a lot of people watch A Nightmare on Elm Street and think that it's really rad and sweet and they like it. But I remember when I was a kid, I always thought that it was silly. Like, it was silly when he had the big arms, and it was silly when he cut off his own fingers. I thought that was kind of cute, honestly. I was like, oh. And then there's that, I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy. Like, not super disturbing. I wasn't bothered. I was laughing as a child. world. So that is tier 1. Pretty simple. Nothing too horrible, but oh boy. It gets worse now, doesn't it? See how many we can cram into one video. Okay, so tier 2 is for, like, people who watch horror movies and they like them. And they've got, like, somewhat of a mature level of taste. This is where, like, one of the comfort zones lies. Like, you're not entirely a normie, but you're also not an asshole yet. You're not an elitist like me. Excuse me, I only am scared by movies that have vomiting in them. We'll get to that. The only thing that fucks me up is Genki, okay? So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, okay, I actually stan this movie and think that it is fairly disturbing. Tobe Hooper once said that he was filming a guy as he died once, and the footage, like when he watched it back, made him feel ill because he felt like it was truly capturing that like unnerving thing that we don't talk about but we're all experiencing, and it was just horrible. And he was like, damn, I gotta make a fucking movie about that shit. And that's why we have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So thank you, anonymous man who died so Tobe Hooper could feel motivated enough to get off his ass and make us a movie. In the Texas heat, a bunch of, like, literal nightmare people got together in Texas and made this. And to be honest, most of the movie is fairly bloodless. There's a lot of bones and shit. There's a lot of macabre stuff, but honestly, I don't think it really, like, clings to the concept of death quite as much as, like, later movies would do. But for the time, it sure was pushing the envelope, I think. I think this one is gonna have to stand the test of time. We're gonna have to stand this one. Also, I agree with Julia Dapper when she says that Leatherface is a queen. The hills have eyes. Okay, so there's actually two good arguments to be made for this. The first is that Wes Craven made a great movie in the 70s that's really fucking edgy, kind of about a conservative family getting the ever-loving fuck killed out of them by a bunch of people that live in the engineering zone where they fucked up the world. Okay, so it's like kind of pseudo-environmentalist, I guess, but for the most part it's just a kind of fucked up movie, and we like that. We genuinely love a good little fucked up movie, but the remake, there's a great argument for that because that movie is genuinely very, very upsetting to watch. Who is the man? Who is the boy? I can't remember his fucking name. He directed High Tension.
High Tension was directed by Alexander Aja.
God! Anyway, Alexander Aja made a really, really fucked up movie too. You should watch that one. That one maybe leans a little bit more into the, oh my god, this is French and violent, where the original is more like, oh, this is American and violent. Saw. Okay, so I'm actually analyzing all of these movies right now, like that's on another editing timeline right now, but the Saw movies, in general, are mostly disturbing for the viscera aspect. Like, people are bothered by the Saw movies because they put people in situations where they have to, like, fuck up their body, and people don't like the concept of disfiguration or, like, having to do something radical to themselves to survive. This bothers them, this idea. It really grabs that part of us that doesn't want to cut off our foot and is like, now you have to cut off your foot. Eat some shit. House of a Thousand Corpses is a film that I've talked about ad nauseum, but it's directed by Rob Zombie, and it's basically kind of a marriage between the Rocky Horror Picture Show, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the Munsters. And Rob Zombie's even directing the Munsters now, so that's appropriate. Now, House of a Thousand Corpses, I think, is mostly bothersome for a lot of, like, really fucked up gore stuff, and also there is a part where someone wears another person's skin. I can see why people would be bothered by this film. This one, I think, deserves to be on this list. I think a lot of hardcore horror fans are like, yeah, I like pretty edgy movies. I like House of a Thousand Corpses, and it's like, it gets a lot worse than that, sister. It gets a lot fucking worse than that, sister. Hostel. In the 2000s, I don't want to say the term, but the term is torture porn. It's like, a lot of critics were labeling these kinds of movies like this, but it was basically like horror movies that were like touching on that viscera aspect, pushing right past the, oh, it's a scary guy, he's gonna get you, what's he gonna do to you? Here's what he does to you. the movie. And so Hostel is kind of like an extended sequence of seeing a bunch of jocks get their shit ripped up, and that's kind of fun. That's kind of funny. We like that. It's directed by Eli Roth, who would later go on to have a career of mostly fuck, but a couple of kind of alright, you know? He's got a touch for the hatred of humanity in there, and you love that. You want that in your dirty movie. You want that in your sleaze. You want someone to hate you in the very pages of the script. Tusk, it is fucking bizarre that Kevin Smith has a film on here. Kevin Smith, the fucking director of fucking Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, has a movie on the Iceberg with Genki, okay? Tusk is a movie that Kevin Smith made about a walrus man. Well, he wasn't a walrus man to start off. He was Justin Long. He was turned into a walrus man. And oh boy, is that milkable. Is that the most milkable image you've ever seen? Is that the most amazing thing anyone's ever done? Why did you do this, Kevin? And also, why did you make the movie, like, terrible? Not only does it have to be a fucked up nightmare movie, it also has to be terrible. The Human Centipede. So The Human Centipede is a movie that I think everybody's memed about. It was kind of like originally memed. I remember back in the day, there was a stand-up comedian named Daniel Tosh, who's probably still around, and very problematic man. I don't know what his actual politics are, so don't quote me on this, but I remember very specifically The Human Centipede became a thing because he talked about it on television and just explained the whole plot of it on television. Which is kind of hilarious, given that The Human Centipede is literally a movie that someone made not even all that long ago about someone sewing people ass to mouth so they shit into each other's bodies as some sort of great organism. Now, this is obviously just insanity from start to finish, and any ideology that one would expect from this can be, kiss goodbye. Goodbye, ideology. There's no point possible. Good luck finding one, sister. Good luck fucking finding one. Mostly it's a movie that's about a human centipede and the doctor who loves having a human centipede and likes to walk his human centipede around, just sort of around his yard and beat it with the paper, have it shit on his lawn. He treats it like a fucking dog. It's so... boy. Midsommar. Okay, so fairly recent edition, and I guess Midsommar is one that we're thinking about a lot. I think Hereditary could also easily be thrown into this category. It's not... I'm a casual horror fan. It's I watch horror movies, like, a lot, and I'm a big fan of horror movies, and these really strike that chord. It's like someone watched, like, The Shining and was like, I know what to do. So Midsommar is a movie mostly about psychedelic drugs and how psychedelic drugs mixed with, like, community and things like that can change you. There's this, like, phenomenon often where, like, shitty guys will be like, I'm gonna do psychedelics with my girlfriend. I'm gonna shove psychedelics into her and see what happens. And so they make a girl do psychedelics with them, and then the girl, while on psychedelics, has the epiphany realization that her boyfriend is shitty enough to have done that to her, and then she dumps him, therefore blowing up in his face completely. Oops, you gave her the good one that helps people's brain. So Midsommar is kind of a personification of that idea. It's like a guy takes his girlfriend to a place where he mostly just wanted to score. Things go super south, and they do a lot of drugs, and the drugs teach the lady that the boyfriend is pretty bad, and the drugs teach the boyfriend that he should have sex a lot, and then get burned in a bear suit. Good lessons from drugs today. So that concludes Iceberg Part 2 of Tier 2 of the Iceberg. Now, I feel like there are more. Okay, so Tier 3 is probably the last one we're gonna do in this video, but in the next video we will continue with the worst ones, and as we go through the worst ones, we're gonna have to kind of explain them. As I said, most of these movies I have seen, but some of them I have not. Some of them I have intentionally avoided my entire life, and I am going to continue avoiding them, but I am going to, like, line out exactly which ones they are. Salo, or 120 Days of Sodom. Oh, look what I have here. It's the 120 Days of Sodom by Marquis de Sade. This is what 120 Days of Sodom is based on, obviously. But Pier Paolo Pasolini basically did a different thing with it, where he tried to apply the atrocities of, like, the Bastille and the French Revolution and all that with World War II atrocities. So you're getting, like, basically Italian fascism in a house torturing young people for the whole movie. The whole idea is that it is a forever document of the horrible things that people did in Italy, and the people that did those things in Italy at the time when this movie was made were still walking the streets. They were still out there. Many of them were not prosecuted for the atrocities of World War II. In the mind of Pier Paolo Pasolini, you're walking around with these fellows all the time. The old fascists who tortured people a lot. Maybe we should remember this. Maybe this is a good thing for us to remember. So Salo, or 120 Days of Sodom, is an extremely shocking film that explains that in detail. And one might say, wow, what a brave movie to make a movie about your fellow countrymen where you call them out for being awful. And yeah, that is pretty epic. And arguably, that's why the homeboy died. Rest in peace, King. Rest in peace. Martyrs. For the most part, Martyrs, while being one of my favorite movies, is like an extremely upsetting, shocking film about a secret society that's trying to get people to nearly die, like as close as you could possibly bring someone to the brink of death without them dying, so that you can see if they can visualize the afterlife in sort of a post-death means. So they're trying to determine whether or not there's a god, and I guess that's kind of the way to do it. If you're gonna try and determine if there's a god, I can't think of another way. So this horrible society grabs women out of an orphanage and tortures the shit out of them to the point where they lose all sense of selfhood, they experience an ego death, they experience all that, and to try and get to the nugget of truth. If that sounds like a spicy movie, that's because it's a spicy movie. It is a spicy movie. Ooh, a spicy movie. The Human Centipede 2. Okay, so this one makes it onto this particular tier because it's a lot grosser, and I'm not sure if the tiers are really working with theme here, but my goodness. The Human Centipede 2 is probably one of the grossest movies I've ever seen in my life, and I've seen a lot of shit. It is entirely fake, so that is one benefit going for it. But it is really horrible. So the first movie, you know, is almost like a joke. Like, it's almost they're doing a bit about how gross their concept is. But in the second movie, they take it like a lot more seriously, and by taking it seriously, it almost makes a farce of the original idea. So it's almost funnier than the original movie, while also being way worse, way more fucking disgusting, like way less redeemable, but also farcical. First is tragedy, then is farce. Pink Flamingos. So Pink Flamingos is a film directed by John Waters, who did so much acid that he got some great movies. And what a king! I actually met John Waters once and he was awesome. So Pink Flamingos is about a drag queen and her family, and they live in a mobile home. They're the most filthy, disgusting, horrible people alive, and they are unchallenged. Until one day they are challenged by a group of people who are performing artificial insemination into kidnapped women to get babies to sell them to lesbian couples as an act of, like, aggression against the government. And that's not even it. Like, also the man of the family goes out constantly showing his dick to strange women until he accidentally does it to a trans woman, and the trans woman absolutely destroys him. And they both clearly have the worst foot fetish I've ever seen in my life. Genuinely, like, they make the running for the most horrible people alive, and they nearly accomplish it. But alas, Divine and her group are just too strong for them. They lick their whole fucking house and then murder them in the woods. Pink Flamingos is great. There's like cannibalism, shit-eating, fuck me, violence, there's an egg lady. There's just a lot of stuff in it that kind of like unnerves you because it pushes some sort of social boundary. fucking queen shit. A Serbian film is not queen shit. A Serbian film is a movie that I feel like I myself have debated about for nearly a decade. The first time I saw it, I was appalled, but confused enough to be interested to know more about it. The more I learned about it, the more I saw directors' justifications for the horrible things that are done in a Serbian film. And now, as I've grown, the more I've learned that those justifications are kind of dumb. So, a Serbian film is basically a movie that is designed for there to be horrible rapes happen. Some movies are just designed for horrible rapes, and this would be one of those. So a retired porn star is called back into action to get some money because he's hard up. You've never seen that fucking plot before. And then he ends up in over his head with crazy rape scenarios that he has to fulfill. And then he does them. And then they give him drugs when he resists so that he will continue to do them. And then for the remainder of the movie, they force him to do horrible rapes until he realizes that he's literally raped his own family. And then yeah. What do you do? What would you do? Cannibal Holocaust is the best film I've ever seen. Okay, well, so Cannibal Holocaust is kind of really hideously gross for a lot of animal violence, but also it's kind of a rite of passage movie. A lot of people watch this movie and then feel like they've grown up into viscera, like they accept their death slightly more when you watch Cannibal Holocaust. Like you learn a little bit more about how fucked up your own existence is by watching this movie. Also, the movie is just racist as shit. It's just the most racist movie. It's literally about how other cultures are really primitive and will kill you. And yes, cannibalism is a practice in some cultures, but like, is it like this? No. The movie's all about how white people are really dumb, and they go running out into these environments, like, thinking, what do they think is gonna happen? They're gonna film their nice, cute little documentary and not get bit by a snake and piss off local tribes and, like, end up getting themselves fucking killed. So Cannibal Holocaust is kind of a response to some of the movies that are actually later on this list. Jacopetti and Prosperi are two directors that made Mondo Cane, Goodbye Uncle Tom, Africa Addio, and these movies were racist and horrible, and they were exploitative, and they were guised as being journalism. So Cannibal Holocaust is an attempt by Ruggero Deodato to criticize that concept. Maybe the real cannibals aren't the ones that are out in the forest. No. But what if we are the cannibals? Deeply profound shit. Let's move on. The house that Jack built is just a really weird one because, like, I don't find this movie to be particularly disturbing, but I guess I can see why somebody would. It's a Lars von Trier directed movie, which I feel like if you're going to grab any of his movies, I'd put Dancer in the Dark right here. Like, I will explain the house that Jack built, but then I'm going to sell you on Dancer in the Dark. So the house that Jack built is a movie about a serial killer played by Matt Dillon, who discovers that people actually really want to die. It's kind of fun and easy to kill people because everybody just seemingly really wants him to kill them. He is either experiencing this delusion of grandeur or something like that, or he's going through this like downward spiral thing, which of course peaks at a moment where he experiences like Dante's Inferno, falling to his death and burning in hell and all of that. What a time to be alive when this movie exists. When this movie came out, I left a review on my Letterboxd for it that just said, "Smart man make big smart movie." That is very much how it feels. It's kind of like, you know, he's talking through a lot of his like guy issues on the screen while also like doing a lot of skeevy violence shit that makes you question whether or not he himself, the director, probably wants to kill you. Isn't that fun? We like to be killed. So Dancer in the Dark, I'm now going to pitch to you as a better alternative to that. It is a movie starring Bjork, where she was literally tortured by this asshole director to make this movie. She hated making it so much that she said she would never participate in a film again, to which she has gone on to participate in other films by better directors. But Dancer in the Dark Iceberg is kind of this magical movie in that it is absolutely made by a horrible asshole, like an angry, hateful god, while also being about this beautiful woman with beautiful music inside her that has a beautiful, very American story, immigrates here, tries to save up money to get medical care, and then is fucked over for that money. And it's completely unjustified. You hate it, it's horrible, and it makes you angry, but it's at least purposeful, and at the end of the movie you feel this cold, crippling satisfaction because you go, ah, this is the true American musical. Not any of those other ones. The movie where the immigrant woman, like, literally just gets fucked. Tetsuo the Iron Man. Tetsuo the Iron Man is a movie I watched on a plane, and it has really disgusting viscera noises. It's like a stop motion film that is really skeevy because it gives you the impression of like the psychosis of like what it would be like for your body to just be growing without your knowledge or consent, you know, sort of in the way that our bodies grow without our knowledge or consent. So it's very much like personifying the way that people change, but it does so by making it metal. So people change into different like metallic parts, and sometimes there are benefits to being a metal person, and sometimes there aren't benefits to being a metal person. It's kind of a fascinating movie about the trials and tribulations of becoming a metal person. And when I say metal person, I mean a person made of metal, not this.
According to Wikipedia, Shoujo Tsubaki was a stock protagonist of Kamishibai during its revival in early Showa period Japan, attributed to a creator known as Seiun.
So the big problem with Shouju Tsubaki is that a lot of the really graphic stuff, mostly it's like gore and sex stuff that happens to like kids and young girls, was hand-drawn. Like a whole lot of it was hand-drawn. And I don't really want to deal with it. And I understand if you don't want to deal with it. I mean, I think we've all seen some anime bullshit in our life where we were like, damn, that's some horny anime bullshit. Well, sometimes you don't really need to deal with the anime bullshit that's horny and horrible, so I'm going to pass on Shouju Tsubaki, because I really don't think I need to deal with any underage children shit. That's one of those things where we don't do that. Nope. And the last film on this iceberg is a film called Suicide Club. So Suicide Club mostly just like, people don't like the concept of things promoting suicide, or addressing suicide, or really interrogating the concept, especially with young people. So I feel like the movie really just kind of grips at that and pulls at it, but it isn't quite as horrible as a lot of the other things on this list. I think it's mostly just dealing with teen suicide is a difficult thing, so it ended up on the iceberg. And that is going to do it for Iceberg Part 1.
Oh no, my brains.
Guess who's back? Back again. May is back. Tell your friends. Hi friends, and welcome back to the absolute pit of total hell. Girl Hell 1999. And I'm the girl, and this is the hell. Welcome to it. We are doing part 2 of the disturbing movies Iceberg today. And if you don't know what that is, you should consider watching my first video. But if you want to know now, basically it's this nasty little bitch that's been haunting my nightmares. I fucking hate this thing. I don't like it. I look at it and it bothers me. I roll over in bed and I see it. There it is. I'm holding it. I thought I was cuddling my cat, but no, I'm cuddling the iceberg. And it turns out this has all been a weird nightmare. Oh god. Yeah, researching this one has not been particularly fun, I will admit. First things first though, I would like to submit a couple of little corrections from the last video. First of all, I do know that Midsommar is about a white supremacist death cult. I do know that. I was joking. Also, Ed and Lorraine Warren are real people, and they're human beings that existed and were alive. So no, I don't stan them because, like, why would you stan a person? They probably had things that they did in their life that were good, and they probably had things in their life that they did that were bad. The other thing I'd like to include real quick is that nothing on this beautiful, beautiful bastard of a list is banned or illegal. That's right, none of this is illegal. You can own this stuff and it's fine. And we will be getting into why and how that's true, while also talking about why they still are pretty fucking bad, but none of them are illegal. Now, does that mean that there aren't terrible, horrible, really fucked up, no good, very bad things on the internet? All the ones that I thought were rumored to be worse than they were turned out to be worse than they were. Absolutely, there are without a doubt no good, very bad things on the internet. I also would like to include that I'm more telling you about some of these things so that if you hear about them, you can avoid them. And wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to avoid some of this shit? I know I would have liked to have avoided some of it, but I had to look at all of it. However, just because a lot of the things on the list are not illegal, I think I should probably state for the record that these things will probably get you banned from places for posting about, posting images of, posting video of, downright posting. I know that you love to post. I love to post too. I'm posting right now. But try really hard not to post Guso milk anywhere where decent people would be upset by it, because you're probably gonna get banned. Tread lightly, my friends, lest ye be banned. So I had a big criticism of the list last time we went through it, that I feel like it jumps very, very quickly from like pretty mundane stuff to really fucked up stuff. I feel like there's a lot of titles and a lot of things that exist that somehow didn't end up on this iceberg and totally should be here because they are that fucked up, or they are that crazy, or they are that cool, and you should know that they exist. You deserve to know that they exist. And Mama is gonna tell ya all about them. So I've decided to add another category of, like, a tier to the iceberg. Other movies that are really fucked up before you get to the real, actual, really super not safe for life stuff. Without further ado, we are going to begin the iceberg by talking about movies that are not yet on the iceberg, but should be, and I'm gonna do that rather quickly. Let's go! Ishi the Killer. Okay, so Ishi the Killer, Visitor Q, and Audition are shockingly not on this iceberg, and totally should be, because Takashi Miike makes movies that will make you squirm out of your little pants. And yes, I mean, compared to, like, you know, Fubar, it's not the worst shit that exists. This is still technically narrative. I think Takashi Miike deserves to be mentioned. I really kind of, like, have grown to enjoy watching his movies, especially with friends. Their first reactions are always really phenomenal. They're a lot more party movies as far as, like, gore movies go than a lot of other ones, even though, like, yes, they're not okay. There's like torture and rape and all kinds of bad business in all of them. Except for Audition. There's no rape in Audition. But the things that are in Audition are far, far bad. Don't worry, they're terrible. Antichrist. So Antichrist, I forgot to mention this when I was talking about Lars von Trier last time, but I find it fascinating that the iceberg picked The House That Jack Built over Antichrist for being included as, like, the most fucked up one. Antichrist is a nearly 3-hour-long depressing movie about a couple going through loss while mutilating themselves. The lady do be mutilating herself. That is a theme that continues throughout the rest of the iceberg. Women's self-mutilation as, like, entertainment turns out to be something that a lot of people make movies about. You'd be surprised. And yeah, I mean, the end of this movie has some genital mutilation like you ain't never seen in a narrative film. So I do highly recommend that you give that one the old college try. Gummo is a Harmony Korine film, and if you don't know who Harmony Korine is, he's basically a master troll mixed with a filmmaker who makes good movies, bad movies, good movies. I honestly don't know how I feel about Harmony Korine. It's been a whole life of mine of not knowing how I feel about Harmony Korine. I figure one of these days I'll have to sit down and rewatch all of his movies and just come up with a conclusion about him. But if you don't know about Harmony Korine, he is the very young screenwriter of Kids and very young director of Gummo. He went on to be a person with regular age, you know, like now he's in his like 40s, but then he was a child when he made these movies. Just super young. And Gummo is a very nihilistic movie about growing up as a kid and having kind of nothing to do and having to make sense of society for yourself. It deals with the harrowing realities of like bullying to children and mental illness to children and neglect, kids being abandoned, basically finding their own system of economics through the selling of dead cats. Gummo is weird and wild and kind of disgusting for reasons that you can't necessarily put your finger on. The thing I love about Gummo is very comparable to a lot of disturbing movies that are like the most disturbing or the best of the most disturbing. It's not that they're showing you something that's horrible, it's that they're showing you something that's mundane, but the horribleness creeps in on you. Goodbye, Uncle Tom. Okay, so Mondo Kane and Africa Adio do appear on this list later on. I don't understand why Goodbye Uncle Tom didn't make it here. So if you don't know about this, this is basically the Salo or 120 Days of Sodom for the antebellum South. Pretty racist movie that's pretty not okay to watch. Slavery and how slaves were treated, sold, abused, and used for their physical bodies and their sexual organs and their labors. It's a fucking nightmare. And it's very, 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 very long. I feel like a lot of people aren't willing to try and engage with this, and there are a lot of good reasons for that. But also, I'm curious to see what more intellectuals would have to say about this, decrying slavery while doing a little bit of slavery itself, because like they used the cast taken from like a Haitian dictator who just gave them however many people they needed for the movie, like extras. You know, maybe the extras were super into it, but I doubt it, based on the things I've seen in the film. But all I know is these people really didn't need this to happen to them to make this movie. The Devils, somewhat lost classic film that was made in 1971 for actual serious money. A movie where a priest is so hot that a bunch of nuns like really want to have sex with him, but because they like can't have sex with him, they fabricate this entire story where they were possessed by demons that made them act out on their sexual proclivities, and that's the only thing they could use to justify why they found Father Grandier so goddamn hot. And there is a scene halfway through the movie that I have in fact seen where a group of nuns take their clothes off, rip down a statue of Christ, and then fuck the shit out of it. And I know that that's horrible or blasphemous or something. It would offend somebody, I think. But Ken Russell made a big spectacle out of the whole thing, and because he did so, he pissed off Warner Brothers so bad that they burned most of the film and said that they would never ever release it. And to this day, you still cannot purchase a Warner Brothers official copy of the director's cut of The Devils. I don't even think you can get a copy of the original cut. And if you can get a copy of the original cut, it's missing a lot of key material. It's a big shame that this movie is not more readily available and widely seen, as it is one of my favorite films, but also it's a harrowing nightmare. Tread lightly. The Killing of America. Okay, so this is kind of like Banned for Television, which is sort of a later addition onto the list as well. Long-ass documentary that just goes through a bunch of scenarios by which people in America were killed. And it's like kind of exploring violence in the country, and the Zapruder film is in there. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that you've probably seen in your life. Some of it's pretty fucking shocking and pretty bad to see. I live in that area and have been near that area and have therefore seen the Zapruder film more times than, well, I can count. Maybe that's why I'm like this. I don't know. Enter the Void. Okay, so this isn't like as disturbing as like MD Pope or something crazy on the list, but I do think it's worth mentioning because Enter the Void is a movie about somebody kind of going on a DMT trip. During their weird DMT trip, they experience their trauma over and over and over again at this one particular point in the movie, and it becomes excruciating. Also, this person like is killed and dies and floats above the whole movie. So the whole movie is from this character's perspective, looking down at the world that's leaving him behind. It's fucking wild. And it's honestly probably one of the least nihilistic movies on this list, surprisingly. I don't know if I ever want to watch it again because, oh boy, reliving that trauma over and over and over again sure was a pain in my ass. It is a great film, and you should check it out. Aftermath Genesis. So I have no idea why the person who made the Iceberg didn't include this, because this is honestly one of the most abhorrent films I've ever sat through. Aftermath Genesis is about two guys who are doing autopsies, and then after hours, one of the guys leaves. One of the guys doing the autopsies is like, heck, I'm gonna just fuck this dead body. And then he fucks that dead body. He has sex with it and all. It's genuinely probably the most vile depiction of necrophilia I've ever seen on film. Not great things to put in your movie. They made an entire movie about it. Luckily, it is a short film, so it's somewhat more tolerable than if it were a feature. But oh boy, I sure hated it, and it deserves to be on this iceberg. Men Behind the Sun. Okay, so Men Behind the Sun is a whole series of movies about Japanese atrocities. There's also Black Sun, the Nanking Massacre is included in this series, but Men Behind the Sun is basically about Unit 731, which we'll talk about later. Basically, scientific experimentation, horrible torture, and abuse and violence. You love to see it. Some of the things that Unit 731 learned, what freezing temperature somebody's fingers are at and when you can break them off. Thanks, Unit 731. Begotten. It's a black and white film with really low quality intentionally. That's a religious film sort of about a retelling of the Bible, but through a more kind of nihilistic lens, I think. It's a little hard to interpret, and every time I've watched it, I've left it with a different interpretation, but my interpretation usually starts with, damn, I gotta go to sleep. Come and see. So it's kind of like one of the only war movies that doesn't encourage war, and it also doesn't make a spectacle of war. It only shows you its atrocities and the products that it leaves behind. It doesn't show you big sweeping battles and you're like, wow, look at all these people organized for a cause. You're not thinking about that as much as you're thinking about, damn, look at these people burned alive. Singapore Sling. So this is a vomit comedy. I don't really know I don't know. The one thing you should know about me is the only real thing that bothers me in fucked up movies is vomit. I don't love a vomit. A vomit and it usually involves people ingesting it, and I don't love that either. But Singapore Sling is, it's a comedy and it is funny, but it also has lots of vomiting in it, and I hate that. There's one part where someone is having sex with someone and they're just vomiting on them while doing it. And you're like, damn, that sucks. Trash Humpers. Okay, so this one isn't necessarily as disturbing as it is just nihilistic and weird. It's also a Harmony Korine movie from the director of Gummo, but the whole bit was he was directing it so that it would be this really weird found footage movie that people could go to their local Blockbuster and rent a copy of Jerry Maguire or something, and Harmony Korine was going to replace the tape that was in Jerry Maguire with a tape of Trash Humpers, so people get it home and they see old people humping trash. Along the way, somebody was like, hey bud, you should just release this movie, and he's like, dang, you right. So Trash Humpers is kind of this amazing relic of a thing that exists for purely prank reasons, kind of, but Harmony Korine sure did make that. Tideland. Okay, so Tideland is a Terry Gilliam movie. I made an entire analysis video about this particular movie. It's widely hated. Most people dislike it because it has depictions of childhood sexuality and also children dealing with death in a really, really, really nihilistic way. Basically, there's this girl and her parents make her make drugs for them, and then when they do the heroin, they die, and she doesn't understand the concept of death because they've neglected her so long and haven't explained that concept to her. She just doesn't understand, so she just treats them like they're alive and nothing ever happened. It's fucking a nightmare. Adam Chaplin. Okay, so I believe this is an action movie. I've never seen this, but I wanted to include it because I have seen enough scenes of it to know that it is one of the goriest movies of all time. Just, it's bloody as all fuck. If you've ever seen Brain Dead or Dead Alive, which is directed by Peter Jackson, Adam Chaplin and Dead Alive are both very, very, very bloody and gory movies that are kind of more fun and accessible than a lot of the other things on this list. So if you want to get into this kind of thing, but you don't really want it to be so nihilistic and serious, might I recommend hopping over to Adam Chaplin and seeing what that's all about. And of course, the last thing that I'd like to include on the iceberg as just like the most unwatchable shit is, of course, Nostalgia Critic's The Wall. Why did this have to happen to me? Why, Doug? Why? Okay, so those are my additions. That's my little add-in area for the iceberg of stuff that you should maybe consider checking out that's also fucked up and weird. Now we're going to get into Tier 4, the really bad stuff, but we're not quite into the horrifically bad stuff yet. We're just into the really bad stuff. So, without further ado, the really bad stuff. Slow torture puke chamber. Okay, so slow torture puke chamber, slaughtered vomit dolls, and regurgitated sacrifice. I'm just gonna throw them all into this like lump sum because they do all have their own individual properties, but they're really not worth getting into. So you did hear me right, slaughtered vomit dolls, regurgitated sacrifice, and slow torture puke chamber. Now I believe there's 4 or 5 of these, but the 3 original movies are, oh boy. So these are exactly the kind of trash that hurts me in specific, and I hate it. These are vomit gore movies, which is to say they are gory movies about people vomiting on each other. And not only are they vomiting on each other, they also vomit in each other's mouths, like on each other's bodies, like they drink the vomit. It's a lot of vomit drinking. To be honest with you, more than anything, it's vomit drinking. No, I'm fine. I'm just fine. So, notoriously, I watched these 3 movies. I did. I sat down and I watched all 3 of these movies. And Lucifer Valentine, the director of this movie, yes, that is his real name. He reached out to me and was very nice. Yeah, I don't know exactly what I think about these. Like, I don't think that they're very good movies on a technical level. I don't necessarily think that they're the best movies on any narrative level. I don't think they're really doing anything that's all that great, but I will say that if we're talking about party movies you turn on that make your friends go, ew, this is one of them. It's more produced than a lot of the stuff that you end up seeing. I admire Lucifer Valentine for not looking at, like, videos of people vomiting and being like, I'm just gonna compile a compilation of people vomiting and post that online and call that a compilation. No. He was like, I'm gonna make these movies. I'm gonna get off my ass and I'm gonna make my vomit gore movies. I'm gonna make some girls vomit and we're all gonna come. And you know what? Good for them. I hope it was a satisfying one. Life and Death of a Porno Gang. Okay, so this is often considered to be somewhat worse a Serbian film, but I don't know if I would necessarily say it's somewhat worse a Serbian film. It is a film from Serbia. It is lower on the iceberg tier, but I think more than anything that's for obscurity reasons and not necessarily because it's worse. Like, a Serbian film is really fucking bad. Life and Death of a Porno Gang is also really fucking bad, but I will say one of them does have a lot more baby shit in it, and we fucking don't like that, do we? So one of the most frequent disturbing movie cliches is the porn-to-snuff pipeline. So basically what that entails is like this belief amongst many of these filmmakers that when you're making a lot of porn, you have a tendency to get a lot of gigs that you don't necessarily want, that are doing things way more hardcore than you'd like to do. And some people are looking for money, so they incidentally go wandering down these rabbit holes, only to end up in human trafficking, red rooms, snuff films, or overall just really bad porn gore stuff that they can't seem to get themselves away from. And while there is some level of truth to this, maybe even more truth to it than we'd like to know, these movies are being made by people that don't necessarily know an awful lot about that, but they are making movies about it, and they do certainly think it's happening. And many of them incidentally kind of caused that to happen. Life and Death of a Porno Gang, just like a Serbian film, is about the porn-to-snuff pipeline, and it's up to you to decide. August Underground 1 through 3. So on the Iceberg, it just says August Underground, but there's a lot to this. There's a lot to unpack in this. Like August Underground 1 through 3, that's August Underground Mortem, and August Underground Penance are all films directed by Fred Vogel of Toe Tag Productions. And this man makes some really maniacal ass movies. Like these are very diabolical things. Even people later on the list will be calling in the Toe Tag people to help them work on their movies. Fred Vogel gets shit done in the disturbing movies community. People really like Fred. These movies are not okay to see, bad to watch, don't like it. It's kind of like being touched by someone you don't like. You're like, get the fuck off me. That's kind of August Underground Mortem in specific. Like the first movie is mostly about them pissing on a girl and torturing her and then going to a Korn concert. But the second movie is more about this like family of killers. Think like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but like way worse. And there's this one part where they're all kind of rooting on this one guy to cut off another guy's dick and put it into his mouth because he's like bound and can't get away. It's really bad to see. I don't like it. And August Underground Penance is really interesting because there's this one scene where they go to a Christmas party and they interrupt the family Christmas by like murdering, raping the whole family. And of course this is horrible, this is terrible, awful, but the cinema of it. Like there's a ticking clock element, there's like character interplay, there's like drama going on. I'm like thinking, wow, you know, for a faux snuff movie, these are kind of movies. Whoa. I wouldn't go out of my way to say that I love these movies or anything, or even that I like them. I have seen them the one time and that was enough for me, and I don't really need to go seeing them again. But I will say that there was surprisingly more to these than there is to stuff as we go down. So keep in mind that this might be the best it ever gets again. This, Snuff 102. Okay, so this is kind of the porn-to-snuff pipeline thing, but there's a journalist who's looking into snuff films and then kind of ends up in a really, really bad one. Like a really, really super not good one. Like, nobody needs to be ending up in a snuff film, but oh man. Just general nastiness, general torture, and nastiness. Admittedly, I think the Iceberg is kind of laid out so that some of the things are like shit you would find out about, and then it's weird to know about it more than it is that it's like really, really severely bad. And so like Snuff 102 is very, very, very bad, yes. But also it's more here for its obscurity value, because there are certainly worse things. Even on this tier, there are worse things. I can think of many. Guinea Pig. Okay, so the Guinea Pig movies are kind of fascinating. They're directed by Hideshi Hino, or at least somewhat produced by Hideshi Hino. There's a little bit of fogginess as far as like everything goes with these movies, but basically the whole deal is these are faux snuff movies with like a tinge, a twinge, a taste, a touch of art. Hideshi Hino, like, yes, is a weird gore man, but also he was like, okay, but this one's gonna be about flowers and how we bloom into this lovely bouquet of gore. Well, he's got a guy in a samurai costume at one bit. It's just, there's a lot of strangeness. One of the movies is called Mermaid in a Manhole, and it's about a woman who's a mermaid who's slowly like dying and rotting while a painter is painting her. That is kind of great. There's a lot of really gross like little pustules, but they're filled with paint. So he takes the pustules of paint and he paints with them. This is horrible. I know this is horrible. This sounds terrible to you. You don't want to watch this, but I'm trying to tell you, if there were disturbing movies that had some level of artistry to them, the Guinea Pig movies are surprisingly kind of like that. One would not think that there would be artistry in the Guinea Pig movies, but there is actual artistry in the Guinea Pig movies. And famously, Charlie Sheen had a real big problem with one of these once and reported it as a real snuff film, but it turns out, no, not a real snuff film, so whatever. Necromantic. Okay, so I made an entire video about this because this shit is whack. So Necromantic is this like series of films, it's 2 films directed by Jörg Buttgereit. He is a German man who makes some of the craziest movies you will ever see in your life. So there's this image, this famous image here. There's really not an awful lot more to say than this image ought to capture it. A guy is sad, so he brings his girlfriend a dead body and he's like, let's have sex with it. And then she's like, okay. So they have sex with the dead body, and then she grows to like the dead body more than him. He starts to feel bad about this and goes on a crazy murderous rampage, and then he dies. Then it picks up in the second movie where she digs him back up so she can have sex with his dead body because she likes him as a dead body more than she likes him as a living body. How about that? Feminism, right, girls? They're bad movies, probably more than anything. Like, they're super not great, but man, are they spicy. And they are filled with unnecessary animal violence like I have never seen. Like, and I mean unnecessary in the sense that there is no justification. Like, in Cannibal Holocaust, there's a very, very minimal justification. Like, they try to justify it, but it doesn't really hold water. But in Necromantic, they don't even try to justify it. They just like to. Get used to it because animal violence seems to be something that a lot of people are really into because so many people have made fucking movies about it. Viva la Muerte. So I haven't seen this film and I hadn't up until recently heard of this film at all, but it's a midnight movie in the same vein as like Eraserhead or The Holy Mountain or Pink Flamingos or something like that. That's really cool. That interests me in it, but apparently it's a very gross movie about the Spanish Civil War, and it's super surrealist and comes at you with a really weird angle, and it's kind of surprisingly good. So I might have to check this one out one of these days, like for realsies. This is probably one of my couple that I saw on the Iceberg and was like, huh, I didn't know about that. There are only a couple of those for me because unfortunately I've seen a lot of this stuff before. Where the dead go to die. Jimmy Screamer Claus, if that is your real name, is a good boy who makes some 3D rendered nightmares. And I mean nightmares. And I mean nightmares.
Your memories, and when you die, it expels the liquid.
This shit will fuck you up. And that's no, like, little joke. This is a animated film about some of the most depraved, like, conceptual work that you'll ever think about. It's a series of vignettes about things that are just gross and sometimes banal and sometimes really kind of dumb and edgy and immature, but also sometimes push you right into that place where you don't want to be, where you're like, fuck. It's what I'd like to call negative nihilism. Not to be confused with positive nihilism, where you're like, my life has no meaning. Yay, I'm free, I get to have fun, I can do whatever I want, and I don't have to worry about things meaning anything. And then there's like negative nihilism, that's like, things don't mean anything, which means you and your dog should fuck the dead body of your parents. You heard me right. You heard me right. Melancholy der Engel. Oh god. You know, there are some things in your life where you're like, I don't think I'm ever gonna have to know about that or talk about that anymore. So you have the recycle bin in your brain. So you take the file of Melancholy der Engel and all of its contents, you put that right in the recycle bin, but you forget to empty the recycle bin. So unfortunately, I still remember Melancholy der Engel, but I did try to forget it. And if I had enough booze, maybe I could do it. Melancholy der Engel is a movie about a group of people that, while experiencing the potential of a future death, decide to live a life of depraved mania, which is very similar to, like, sort of the way that a lot of these filmmakers approach the genre. They feel like they have to do depraved shit because that's life, man. Really, really gross, has a whole bunch of terrible animal violence that's super inexcusable, not very good to see, and bad. Also, the movie, I think, doesn't really amount to very much. Surprisingly, a lot of this movie starts to blur the line between what is fiction and what is non-fiction. Obviously, a lot of this stuff has real-world value and truth to it, but it's hard to say that it's non-fiction. Like, we would still call it fiction. So, like Melancholy der Engel, for instance, yeah, it's a fictional movie. It's a narrative movie, but also the BDSM, animal violence, and a lot of the sex is very real, including all the scat stuff is real, the pee stuff is real, the vomit stuff is real. So then you start to wonder, well, what isn't real? What is narrative about it? And then you kind of wonder, damn, does that make this non-fiction or fiction? It starts to blur that line. But soon, the line won't need to be blurred anymore, as we will be just seeing real footage of things that happened. Juvenile crime. Okay, so I actually wrote some notes here about all this stuff, and this is the most cursed notes of all time. Like, everything on these notes is just about stuff you don't want to know about. I think at the end of this video series, I might burn these notes. I don't want to have these notes. Juvenile crime is basically a really rare movie. There's another movie similar to this called Concrete. There's a documentary about it. There's a couple of little things like that, and a lot of YouTubers have talked about it, but it's the story of Junko Furuta. She was a young girl who endured 44 days of hideous torture, some of the worst torture that anybody has ever documented. And after she was tortured to literal death for 44 days, she was placed in a drum and filled with concrete. Really makes you fucking upset, doesn't it? Peeves that fucking noodle in there, huh? So yeah, this is a notoriously rare movie though, because it's fairly exploitational when it comes to talking about this story. The story itself deserves some level of justice and honesty, and I think while it is difficult often to find meaning in suffering, I admire people making the attempt to try and find meaning in the suffering. But I really don't admire people exploiting the suffering for entertainment of others, for kind of weirdly fetishy reasons, it seems. I don't know. Juvenile crime is not one that I'm actively pursuing, and if I was actively pursuing it, I probably wouldn't be able to find it anyway because it is notoriously rare. You'd be surprised the fucking things you can find on the internet these days. My God. Philosophy of a knife. Okay, so I'm gonna be straight with you about this. I did not enjoy this movie very much. I watched it 2 nights ago, and yes, it is gory, and yes, it is about Unit 731 in the same way that Men Behind the Sun is about Unit 731, and medical experimentation, torture, things like that. Only this one really has a thorn in its side for socialism or left-leaning stuff. It feels like it's coming at it with a narrative. And so there's a lot of stuff when we get further down the list, especially in the documentary stuff, where they start to include a lot more this horrible atrocity is justification for us to continue to do violence to minorities, or continued violence towards this group, or continued hate towards this group, or something like that. So keep in mind that as we go, a lot of these things do kind of have a little bit of a political narrative bent. Something you'll find is that a lot of these movies start to disagree vehemently with you and what you believe in. You know, I feel like gore is one entryway, but giving me bad politics is not gonna work for me, sister. That said, there were horrible communist atrocities, and those have been very well documented. The filmmaker directly says that this is all a product of Marxism. This is what happens when workers stand up for themselves. You get atrocities like this. I don't know. Just seems kind of dumb to me. Maybe could have given that one a little bit more of a nuanced thought there, sister. And look at that! That's another tier done! We did it! We did another little tier. Isn't that great? I'm so happy that we've done it. We've got so many left. We've got so many left. And oh man, I've got extra stuff to talk about too. This is gonna end up being an entirely independent iceberg that I'm probably gonna have to publish of all of these movies, organized, and I'm just gonna post it somewhere for everybody to have of all of this shit. Oh god. So I guess we're gonna get into part 5 now, aren't we? Alright, so part 5 is bordering on what I would say would be considered things that are not safe for life. No matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, if you Google this shit and you show it to somebody, you're gonna get in trouble, so don't do it. And also, looking at it for yourself damages your lifetime. Potentially. It could potentially damage your mind, potentially traumatizing things. So the way that I would put it is real world violence has this tendency to look like fake violence. It looks and sounds more like a movie than movies do sometimes. Like that pitch shift of reality has a tendency to manifest as trauma to you. So what I mean is, if you end up looking at an awful lot of people dying, like in gory things and really like almost surreal violence, like surreal, realistic violence, you start to depersonalize a little bit from your reality and see the world as a scary, horrible place. So I'm warning you all again, because we are moving into not safe for life stuff. And as we move into not safe for life stuff, you're not going to like the things that we learn about, because I didn't like learning about these things, and now I get to tell you about them. Isn't YouTube fun? Isn't YouTube fun? Women's flesh, my red guts. Something that you'll see on the iceberg as we go down is we're going to start to see certain people pop up a lot, like certain names, certain producers, certain people that make specific things. There are people that have identified the market for these specific things, and they do provide. Women's Flesh, My Red Guts is directed by the same director as Tumbling Doll of Flesh. Both movies are kind of like faux snuff-ish movies about people getting mercilessly hacked to pieces, women specifically, and they also are about the porn-to-snuff pipeline. They're kind of like faux snuff movies about women getting not only killed, not only raped, not only like scat stuff happen, like horrible shit happens to them, but also they are dismembered, ripped apart, and fucked every step of the way. The mixture between porn and mutilation is where things start to get really, really, really bad to see and experience. Specifically, like Tumbling Doll of Flesh. Dear God. That movie is one of the worst narrative films that I think exists. I don't think that would be that controversial of a take. There are worse ones, maybe, but that one's pretty fucking bad. And like, they're all faux snuff, so the purpose, I guess, is to try and trick you into thinking that it's real, and some of it like does very much feel very real, but also it's the psychological aspect of enduring these films. A lot of it is like not having the proper context for understanding like torture and murder. Not the pain, but the suffering. Seeing something that confronts your understanding of suffering can be very taxing on the mind. Careful with these. Careful! Ostermontag. Okay, so this is kind of an OG August Underground. So this was made like a while back. It's like a narrative film. It's not super great. Most people I saw online said that it was fairly forgettable, or kind of one of those movies that a lot of people know about, but not a lot of people like. I might be wrong about that. Maybe there's some Ostermontag stands out there, but I don't really think that there are an awful lot of Ostermontag stands out there. Kind of a prototypical movie that started this genre or kicked this kind of stuff off, or is a classic of this genre, but isn't necessarily one that holds up today. Girl Hell 1999. Okay, so I hate it, and I don't want to deal with it. I've decided that it's time to don the cat ears, because things are getting a little bit sad and spicy around here, aren't they, folks? Okay, so Girl Hell 1999 is a hell for girls like me in 1999. So this is a new genre for us as we continue forward, and it's a new genre that you're going to hear about that you may not have known existed until this very moment. And that genre is sexual self-mutilation, or more specifically, sexualized self-dismemberment. So I don't know if y'all are aware of the musician Poppy, well, I guess she's also a YouTuber, or she was, but on her like newest metal record that's been around for a couple years, I guess at this point, she talks about how she has developed this insatiable lust for blood and the taste of blood and the texture of blood, and like tried to enjoy sweet things, but sweet things just never work. Blood's the thing she wants. So that's kind of the vibe with like Girl Hell 1999 and a lot of movies like that. They're girls with insatiable bloodlusts for themselves in a sexualized way. It's a spicy one. Ooh! It's kind of an alternate Earth where everything is really bad and really nothing makes sense. Everything's really fucked up for her. It's kind of a rape and revenge where she gets raped, and then as revenge, she starts like taking revenge out on her own body or mutilating her own body. It's for guys who like to jerk it to the concept of women cutting off their own arms and legs, pulling out their own guts and shit. And everybody knows a guy just like that, right? Mai-chan's daily life. Okay, so Mai-chan's daily life is kind of like a Girl Hell 1999 situation where Mai-chan is basically like forced into this role of being a maid and a servant for a lot of people that have sexual and violent desires and needs. She is there to fulfill them constantly forever. So the whole bit is that she just regenerates endlessly, so she like enjoys having herself cut to pieces, and people cut her to pieces, and it's no big deal. She'll regenerate, and then she gets to enjoy it again. Isn't that the weirdest fetish? Like, imagine having a fetish for a woman that regenerates so you can hack her to pieces over and over and over so you can continue to get off. Imagine being that guy. Eccentric psycho cinema. Okay, so this is kind of a weird way of titling what this is. It is a series of what they commonly refer to as the vulva in a jar movies. So it's basically about this guy. It's kind of like a guinea pig sort of vibe. Instead, the vibe is cutting off women's vaginas and showing it to them. Like being like, look at your vagina, I took it from you. What a fucking creep, man. A lot of people really swear by these. A lot of people really like them, and I found quite a few fans. So I was a little bit surprised, but people are really big fans of this. There are 7 of these movies, and in each one of them, some of the similar beats are played out. It's like kidnapping, dismemberment, murder, things like that. But with the caveat that there's usually some kind of weird something or other in there. Like one movie, the guy pees in a girl's vagina. That's terrible. Don't pee in my vagina. But, I mean, primarily it's all about, cutting off the vagina, showing it to somebody, and then putting it in a jar. And there's 7 of them. So if you ever wanted 7 whole movies just about that, congratulations. There's not 1, there's not 2. There are 7 for you. Don't you feel special? The Taming of Rebecca. It's kind of exactly like the title implies. Like, what do you think The Taming of Rebecca would be about? Some sort of bondage or BDSM situation that just is really rough about some asshole taming a woman. Of course, the way to do that is like through intense depersonalization in BDSM. It's kind of the way that people look at like breaking a horse, but they do it with a person through bondage. So it's shockingly real bondage porn. And it is real. I mean, ultimately it is real, but I mean like it's shocking. And it's real, and it's bondage porn. And I mean, if the title, The Taming of Rebecca, bothers you somewhere inside yourself, maybe you're not one of the people that should be tamed by this particular one, sis. The Necrophiles. Okay, so this movie comes from 1997, and it is a big old funny joke that a lot of people seem to find funny. I guess since the Wendigoon video about the disturbing iceberg, a lot of people have been rewatching it and talking about how funny it is. So the whole bit is there's like a zombie rapist. So it's reverse necrophilia. So instead of like people having sex with dead bodies, the dead body comes back from the dead to have sex with people. You give them points for literary cleverness. They have an understanding of dramatic irony. It's apparently dedicated to Joe D'Amato, which is really, really funny if you know anything about really bad Italian movies. There's also a demon baby fetus in it. I have not yet seen this one, but I'm telling you what, the more I learn about this, the more I'm like, dang, this is gonna have to be one of the ones that I'm gonna have to watch. Unlike The Taming of Rebecca, which I'm probably going to try to not watch, as to not get tamed. The next film is called The Gateway Meat. I don't know exactly everything there is to know about this, but I did fall down a rabbit hole with this one in particular for a long time because there's a lot to it and it's kind of weird. So first off, the movie is directed by Ron DeCaro. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce your name, Ron, if you're alive or not. I don't actually know if Ron is still with us. I assume Ron is still with us because I found his Twitter account. And I mean, I wasn't sure if it was his Twitter account. I couldn't be for sure if it was his Twitter account, but he did tweet this. So I'm thinking it probably is his Twitter account. Yeah, this guy's made some really fucking weird movies. They're kind of like August Underground movies. They're kind of like Fred Vogel style sort of stuff, but they're family oriented. So it's like family gets together killing people in a mundane fashion. They're trying to build up the helm of their father who just died, who is a Satanist. So they're also trying to be really good Satanists. It's genuinely just fire. I don't even understand. And of course, Ron DeCaro is the lead of the film as well, so it's a self-insert sort of thing. And throughout the film, there are like some pretty hideous set pieces that you don't want to see. He also has another film called Eating Razors, which just the thought of that bothers me. I don't want anybody to start any fights, but I'm kind of a little bit, I must admit, on the fuck Ron train a little bit. Like, just a little bit on the fuck Ron train, because he did super have his daughter be in this movie. And she's like young, and she participates, but she doesn't participate, and he kept her away from it for the most part. From what I've heard, he supposedly kept her away from the production of it, but he did also shoot her doing something for it, and she was involved. So in my brain, like, imagine you're 30 years old and you finally see that movie your dad made that you were in, and you're like, oh, dang, Dad, why did you do that? Don't you hate it when your daddy's a rat bastard like that? I do. And finally, the last fucking thing for this particular part of the video is called the bunny game. So if you don't know about the bunny game, I have decided to add this to this particular segment of the video, because I don't know if people know about this, but so it's a movie that's fairly okay shot, bind, torture, kill kind of movie. It is fake, but my God, is it something to endure? I don't know who made it, probably some asshole. Wouldn't it be weird if you like knew somebody your whole life and then they revealed to you like later in your life that they had made one of these fucked up movies? Like, imagine knowing the guy who made the bunny game. Well, so the bunny game is about a woman dressed up like a bunny who's being tortured. That sounds real original. And look at that. With that movie being out of the way, we have finished part 2 of the disturbing movie Iceberg. And for the most part, I added stuff to the list this time. So y'all have a lot of homework. If you want to get on my level, you're gonna need to catch up. I've been watching these for days now, and I forgot who I am. Okay, but in all seriousness, I do feel like I need to end this video and probably the next video with a tiny little uplifting little message, even though it might read as bullshit to you. I do want to say something about it. I find that having seen all of the horrible, fucked up things that I've seen in my life, it can be sometimes difficult to find things about life that are good. And the entire reasoning for this is because, like, our existence is colored by things that we experience and the things that we fill our little cup with. And so when you fill your cup 75% of the way with death and violence, then it kind of sours the other 25%, because, like, you're expecting death and violence all the time, everywhere. There's a lot to life. A lot. There's a lot to life. If you squint your eyes and you only see certain things, you're going to think that life is only those certain things. It's like we live in a world where sometimes people legitimately forget that grass grows out of the ground. So hold on to your heart, and I'll be seeing you in the next part where we kill your heart completely dead like mine is dead. Your internet girlfriend is back to talk about really fucked up things. I didn't rehearse that. I'm just a psychopath. So, we have been slowly working our way down the disturbing movies Iceberg, which is this little nightmare right here. And oh boy, has it been taking a big old toll on my mental health. For instance, before, I was just wearing these like as a gag. Now I'm wearing them all the time. I'm just like this now. Thank you, Disturbing Movies, for turning me into a cat girl. Which movie was it that did it to me? No one knows, but probably Ginky Ginky.
I don't want to host this show no more.
This one's gonna be rough. This one's not gonna be fun, and I'm trying to brighten it up as much as humanly possible. I want us to have some level of fun as we do this, which is not gonna be possible, and also it's not particularly responsible because we are talking about a lot of real, actual human death. Nobody wants that to be a thing that they talk about in their day-to-day life, but some people have jobs that require that. The person that we're talking about is myself. So, without further ado, what are we waiting on? Why are we doing this? Why are we still sitting here when we could be talking about really horrible, gross movies while being cats? Part 6. So put on your cat ears, girls. It's time for us to nya our way down the disturbing movie's iceberg. God, wow. That was probably one of the spiciest things May has ever said. You know, to be honest, I'm more proud of it than I think I should be. But that's sort of my everything, really. I mean, once I get 100,000 subscribers, I'm gonna be proud of this. Why? Famously, there's Faces of Death, which is also on this list here. And I think that it's on the list because I think Faces of Death has this reputation for being kind of spooky-ooky, ding-dang-dooky. But I don't know, it's not. Like, the thing with Faces of Death is that the majority of it is fake. And the things that are real really aren't that shocking. I think most of the things in the movie are more shocking in far away conception, which is often racist, by the way. Like, oftentimes the things in Faces of Death are exploiting like white people's fear of other cultures by recreating scenes that justify their fear. So Faces of Death is kind of stupid, in my opinion. I'm not a huge Faces of Death stan. It's what it is. But there is a remake coming out from the people who made Cam, and if you haven't seen Cam, it's like a pretty spooky movie about being a cam girl, and it depicts being a cam girl and the psychological implications of that in a really, really amazing way. I highly recommend it. That person is going to be writing the new Faces of Death, and I can't imagine what that's going to be, but I'm very excited for it. Traces of Death is not Faces of Death. It does what Faces of Death does, but it's like, no, this is just, here you go. Here's the death. And it's the real deal. Here you go. So you see like automotive crashes, there's like monster truck rallies where things go wrong and explode, there's assassinations, there's beheadings, there's suicides, there's attempted suicides, there's all kinds of shit in Traces of Death. And it is like a multi-part series. I think there are 5 of them, but I could be wrong. And each one of them is just a document of all these people who have super duper died. And not only have they super duper died, but they died in like really ugly ways. Like they ate shit. It is what it is. If you're watching Traces of Death, that's what you're in for. We are in kind of the area of this considered not safe for life. If you're at work, probably don't talk about this. If you're with your family, probably don't talk about things like this. This kind of stuff can definitely get you some level of social punishment, even if it's not a legal punishment. Faces of Death but real, and MD Pope but if it were way, way, way less hardcore, more dressed up, and 20, 30 years old. It's not safe for life, it's sad stuff, it's like horrible, like actual death stuff, but there's like enough of a time distance, I guess, to get a lot of people away from it in a way where they don't feel like it's quite enough. It doesn't quite scratch the modern itch for real people death or whatever. But for the most part, Traces of Death is admired by many of people for being one of the most shocking things that exists. If you're brave, be brave, sister. Be brave. We'll all support you. Mondo Cane. Okay, so I'm gonna lump Mondo Cane and Africa Adio together because they're both made by Jacopetti and Prosperi, who are 2 filmmakers most known for making horrific, exploitative, racist, going over to countries and causing atrocities so that they can film them, and encouraging people to do atrocities so that they can film them. They encouraged a dictator to hang somebody so that they could film the hanging. A lot of the stuff in Mondo Cane, it has like a debate as to whether or not it has any cultural relevance, really. A lot of it's debatably fake. A lot of people talk about how fake things in Mondo Cane are. And again, kind of with Faces of Death, a lot of it is meant to exploit white people's fears of other cultures. They've notably been called out for this by the film Cannibal Holocaust. And Cannibal Holocaust is a film basically talking about how Jacopetti and Prosperi were causing more atrocities than anything. So they were worse than the people that they were mocking with their films. So Jacopetti and Prosperi are very interesting Italian filmmakers. You should definitely look into this if you don't already know about them. Not necessarily for their shocking content, but more just for like, these were guys. These are guys that made movies that, and some of them are some of the most horrific, vile movies you can ever see. So the next thing is called junk films. This is a name that we're going to be seeing a lot, so I'm just going to start by talking about the person. Kiyotaka Surisaki is a death photographer. A lot of his work is just following around dying and filming or taking pictures of them, or being in high traffic areas where people are in situations where they often die violently or die accidentally. He's gotten video and photo of these things. His idea, I guess, is more that it's an artistic project for him, and a lot of his movies more exploit that sort of thing than they are meant to, like, exploit any particular fear. So junk films is more of his attempt to shock you, less of his attempt to make things that have some sort of truth or relevance to them, and more just for pure shock reasons. And it's just a load of people dying or being dead or having already died, having their faces blown off, or having everything but their face blown off. A collection of just dead shit. Buried in the Sand. Buried in the Sand is kind of a spicier one because, so it's explicitly conservative. I mean, it's spoken, like they say this is a point of the movie. It's explicitly a conservative film trying to document the atrocities of Saddam Hussein's administration so as to justify American intervention in Iraq. Of course, this is like a weird whataboutism because I'm pretty sure that the big problem people had with entering Iraq was that it didn't have anything to do with 9/11, but that's whatever. That's neither here nor there. There's a truth to the way that we craft documentaries in that no documentary is actually objective. Every shot chosen and arranged in a specific context is always meant to deliver some sort of message by the editor. Anybody touching it in any sort of way is influencing it somewhat politically. So you have to understand that while yes, this movie is a movie about the atrocities of the Hussein administration, and there were many. Also understand that this movie and many movies like it, and many movies on this particular list, are trying to pull together a sort of contextless situation to exploit your fear of death, and sometimes it's to get something out of you, and sometimes it's just to fuck you up or take your money. While Faces of Death was an exploitation film for the most part, it's a Mondo movie, but it's an exploitation movie in that it's trying to get you to give them your money because you are afraid of death. Understand that Buried in the Sand is a movie that is trying to shock you with something that is true and is a collection of atrocities as to push this particular agenda. And so, if anything, I think it's a good exploration on understanding how people can sort of propagandize something simple, but I have a feeling that the way that this one was arranged was slightly askew. Orozco the Embalmer is another film made by the death photographer that we talked about earlier, and it's a documentary basically following an embalmer, just in his sort of work, in his day-to-day. He hates his fucking job. Like, the whole bit of it is that he hates his job because he doesn't feel like he gets enough time to relax or rest, and he has the desire to do the job and to do it right, and he wants to do right by his family and by God and by all of the things that manifest in his life that have importance to him. But also, you know, it is a very taxing job. You do have to deal with a whole bunch of fucking terrible things. Terrible human realities. But the thing that I'm not mentioning is that the entire time this documentary about this man is going on, he is stuffing dead bodies, putting back together people's, like, fucked up pieces so that they look like a presentable human for the grave. And it shows this in intricate detail because, again, it's a death photographer and he's very unafraid of showing you the real truth about what happens after you die. And the truth is, what happens after you die is somebody's going to be kind of annoyed that they have to deal with your body. It's going to be kind of an inconvenience for them. They're going to want to go down to Wendy's and get themselves a Frosty or some shit, but you just had to be in their way. Doesn't that feel great? Death File Red. Okay, so this one is another really massive rabbit hole to fall down because on the surface of it, it doesn't really look like it's much of a thing. It looks very similar to a lot of things on this list, but when you realize how expansive the particular people involved in this and what they were trying to do and continue to try to do, you'll kind of understand more about the seedy underbelly of weird internet videos about people dying gore porn. So the person that is responsible for Death File Red is also the editor for the Embalmer documentary, and is also responsible for Archives of Death, or Archivos de Muerte, which we'll learn about later. Essentially, all of these are a long series of, like, a Japanese Faces of Death, or more, I guess, a Japanese Traces of Death. Basically, it's just exploiting more death images. You've seen shit like this if you've seen anything like this. None of these are particularly worse than the other one. Some of them, I guess, maybe are a little bit more caustic, but for the most part, it's all exploiting the same fear, and it's all doing sort of a similar utility. It's trying to express to you that there is death and mutilation in the world that you live in. Banned from television. Okay, so this is another rabbit hole for you. There was a guy who fucking had a bunch of footage of really awful shit. People dying, people being assassinated, shit just going south. He was like, shit, I better make something with all of this as some sort of clip show to show to people to exploit their fears of these things to get money. I can prove that this is the guy's intent behind this because later on he was looking through some footage of stuff that was banned from television. Some of that footage was girls taking off their clothes and showing their boobies. And when he saw the boobies, he thought, wow, those girls sure are going wild. And the rest was history. Yes, Banned from Television is created by the guy who created Girls Gone Wild, and they are created for basically the same reasons, only instead of death, it's sex. Isn't that just spicy? Isn't that just amazing? Wow. Black Metal Veins. Alright, so our homeboy Lucifer Valentine, who we remember from the Vomit Gore trilogy, went on to make a documentary about some people who are super into black metal, and I don't mean like Burzum, I mean like black metal. Some obscure-ass, non-Dark Throne-ass black metal. And heroin. They love that. We love some heroin. And about halfway through the movie, while most of the things in the movie are fairly despicable and horrible, and they do try to exploit a lot of awful shit, about halfway through the movie, Lucifer Valentine kind of gets this idea of maybe I need to narrativize this a bit more. So he encourages the heroin addicts to do a bunch of fake fictional shit in the middle of the real world reality of what they were living in. And so by the end of the movie, you have a completely fabricated, kind of terrible ending to an otherwise pretty interesting documentary about people being on heroin. Some movies are kind of beyond criticism in the sense that you kind of look at them instead of watching them. But this one, I think, begs to be watched. I think you want to learn about this subject. It's just a shame that it can't just be what it is. It can't just be what it's about and the people that it's about. It also has to be this bigger, more cinematic thing. There are videos on YouTube of heroin addicts talking about their real world experience, and you can see sort of the conditions that they're living in. It's more shocking than this is, in a lot of ways. The dark side of porn. Okay, so I wasn't 100% sure if this was the notable dark side of porn, or if there was a darker side of porn. Like, is there a secret, spooky, horrible documentary called The Dark Side of Porn about the dark side of porn, or is it just the one? I think it's just the one. Documentary series explaining a lot of the weird proclivities of porn that people maybe don't think about. So like there's the obvious one, which is like, okay, so when the AIDS crisis came around, porn had to just kind of stop. Shit, we could be spreading HIV and not even knowing it, because at that time they weren't super concerned about that kind of idea. And then when it finally did like blow up into an issue, they had to make changes. That is a porn industry problem that super happened. And it did cost a lot of people their lives from HIV and AIDS. Also, snuff stuff is super very real, and people pay a lot of money for it, and you know, it's out there just like everything is out there. If you really want to look for something, you can in fact find it. But the thing that's to be remembered here about all of this is that ultimately the way that you get access to some of these really horrible things is all about that money, baby. Rich people be doing some crazy shit. The things that they have access to is kind of nuts, and the things they can just do, fucking crazy and horrible. A lot of like snuff stuff is very funded, and that scares the shit out of people. It scares the shit out of me. And people wonder why we have like a human trafficking thing and like what all that's about. Maybe it's all people financing horrible rape and murder. So basically what I'm saying is, if you want to live, consider like OnlyFans. Like, I wouldn't go straight to the porn industry, you know what I mean? Like, they might fuck you over. Also, we gotta talk about another thing. I don't love talking about it, and as the words come out of my mouth, I'm gonna feel bad. And you know, YouTube might also have a big problem with part 2 and 3 of this series, because yeah, I mean, shit's getting worse. It gets bad. I do apologize, but I do also believe that these things deserve to be documented, and you should know about these things. Specifically, if these things ever come to light, you should know about what they are and who is responsible. So, with that said, there is a porn video called Animal Farm that exists. By exists, I mean it's kind of lost in the sense that there are some people that claim to have seen it, and a lot of people claim that it's just not, it doesn't exist, or it's not around, or something like that. I believe that it does exist, because I know for a fact that there are terrible things involving animals all over the internet. Hideous problem that I've talked about many times on my YouTube channel in the past. Even a lot of movies on this list, it's like so many of them. A lot of these filmmakers felt the need to just kill animals to make their drama, and it's not necessary, but people be doing it. So Animal Farm is a porn film that is entirely bestiality, and apparently it's some of the worst shit you will ever see in your entire life, and funded, in the sense that somebody put some money down and Animal Farm became of it. And isn't that fucking terrible? That someone can just pay money and Animal Farm happens? So yeah, porn's canceled. Porn's problematic. Porn's gross. Fuck a porn. I'm just kidding. You can make porn if you want. Just don't end up in a snuff film, please. I don't want you to. And I also really don't want you to do any Animal Farm shit. Do all the porn you want. Just don't do that. Archivos da Morte saga. So this is the same as the Death Files, basically. Matter of fact, it is the same series. People argue that Archives of Death is a sequel to Death Files, I think is what it was called. And of course, this is also, yeah, the editor for The Embalmer. Yes, it's called the Archives of Death, but for some reason, like, it's more prominent in other countries as Archivos de Morte. But ultimately, it's the same general idea, which is like, hey, if you're wanting to be a doomer and see a bunch of people get their shit killed, here you go. It's all for you, sister. Oh boy, oh man. We have finished part 6 of the Iceberg now. Oh boy, you know, I must admit that there was a part of me that never thought that I would get through this. Like, I've been watching through all this stuff and dealing with this, and like, oh man, it feels endless to me. Like, it's never going to end. Like, even still, even right now, I feel like I'm trapped in hell and I can't get out. It's a nightmare for me. And probably for you too. I keep forgetting about the audience. I'm so sorry. Y'all must be going through it too. You know what? Here's a hug. Let's just all have a hug. Okay, I'm gonna close my eyes. Okay, we're hugging. Aw, I love y'all. Part 7 of the iceberg. It's time for the worst shit. And it's not the worst shit, there's two. And there's two more really bad ones, and then we're gonna be done. We're gonna call it a day. We're all gonna go home. We're gonna smoke ourselves a big old cigarette, and we're gonna have ourselves a glass of a margarita, and we're gonna forget. That's right. We're gonna forget. Death to Kafar. We're now lurking in the world of not safe for life stuff, so this is stuff that, like, yeah, you probably don't want to Google it. You probably don't want to look it up. You don't want to watch it. You probably don't want to buy it. It does exist and it is out there. There is not a lot of information about some of these things, and I guess I understand why. That probably has something to do with the fact that nobody on Earth would want to watch this. But for some reason, there are some people out there that actually want this and want to watch this, so Death to Kafar is for you. It is literally a mixtape, like, shockumentary on beheadings. It's just a bunch of beheadings. So if you like beheadings, this is for you. I don't think I like them unless Guar does them. Then I think they're hilarious. Guso Milk 1 through 4. When I was young and on the internet, there were a lot of, like, really, really nasty, weird things that would just pop up everywhere. And, you know, like, Best Gore was a website, and, like, Orgish, and we'll talk about all this stuff. And this stuff has always been around. You know, Live Leak is a thing now. Rotten.com was a thing. I remember Something Awful always had, like, forums where you would incidentally end up finding things that you didn't want to find out about. And I feel like Guso Milk, one of the holy grails of that era, of that. Like, it's one of the things of that era that's like a holy shit, this is terrible. So Guso Milk is ultimately what they call an eel soup film. It's eels mixed with shit and pee and, like, vomit and all kinds of stuff, all then funneled into a person. And they put the soup into a person. And that's Guso Milk. Isn't that fantastic? Isn't that fantastic? Isn't that just fantastic?
I don't want to host this show no more.
And also, it's like a lesbian thing, supposedly. So it's like two lesbians do to eels, their own feces, and each other, things that God would probably cry about. I'll be real. I'm not a Christian, but I find that concept hilarious. UNKB002. You want to picture it. You want to help somebody picture what this is without giving them the whole thing. Because the whole thing would just fucking make you click right off. Like, I would click off. I'm surprised I haven't already clicked off this video that I'm making right now. So the bit with a lot of the stuff on this iceberg is like, yes, this stuff is BDSM, and yes, this stuff is scat porn, and yes, this stuff is gross and violent and real human death. The reason it's on the iceberg is because there's usually this, like, identifying factor. Like, there's something about the thing that makes it, I'm not gonna say the word special, but I am gonna think the word special. UNKB002 can't just be scat porn, because if it was just scat porn, we'd just be like, oh, that's just scat porn. I don't like scat porn. I like regular porn. Excuse me, I only watch furry porn, okay? A woman's face is used like a urinal, with poop as well. Unfortunate. Unfortunate indeed. I wish I could say that that was the worst things, but nope. Nope, not even close. Not even fucking close. Not even close. Not even close. We went through Guso Milk and not even close. Not even close. Not even fucking close. Y'all are about to learn about fetishes that y'all didn't know existed. Like, you're gonna learn about dirty fetishes that you didn't know existed, and, like, and goodness. Goodness, May. What are we doing? Channel 309. Okay, so this one has a positive reputation. Supposedly people like this movie. I don't know what it is. I haven't seen it. I looked up information about it. From what I saw, it is kind of surrealistic heavy BDSM. And when I say heavy BDSM, I mean like people being, like women being just mercilessly beaten. And of course this is all, it's satanic is the bit, so, but that's kind of the thing that people like about it, because like it's satanic, but also they try to do something kind of artful with how evil and crazy it is. Like it's a very visual experience, supposedly, beyond just the fact that it's BDSM porn. There's this aspect of like weird artistry to it that people seem to really respond to. If you've seen this, I'm sorry, I don't know. I will not be watching this. I have been abused in my life, and I've felt it, and I've seen it, and hardcore BDSM and seeing women just mercilessly beaten, I don't need it. I don't need it. I sure don't. Squirm Fest. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. I think I need more cute shit around me, I swear to God. Hi, Strawberry. Can you help me with this? I need you to explain this to these people for me, because I don't want to. I don't want to host this show no more.
I don't want to host this show no more.
No, we're going to talk about it. It's going to be fine. Okay, so Squirmfest is another holy grail of holy shit. It's a 1989 video film that's kind of like a dare challenge that a lot of people force their friends to watch, but it's also some really weird porn, basically. It's weird porn. So Squirmfest is essentially somebody took a bunch of worms, which is where this begins, truly. You know, this squirming around, and that's okay. That into a food processor. So a bunch of worms into a food processor, and they mix that with urine and feces. Urine and feces. So they do a little food processing there, and they come up with a wonderful, wonderful soup. And I know you're thinking, okay, and then they probably ingest that weird soup, and that sucks. Yes, that's true, they do. But not only that, unfortunately, they also do pour some of it into a lady's sexual organs. So you're going to probably want to not watch this one with your mom or dad, as they might wonder what you're whacking off to these days. And also, you would be unsurprised to hear that it is made by the person who did the Archives of Death series, so he started moving into the weird porn world, and his weird porn world stuff is weird, dog. It's weird. You think you know about weird porn, but I promise, you don't know about weird porn. You don't. Okay, admittedly, we're also getting into stuff that isn't super well written about. The writing that is out there for some of this stuff is not super good. Like we're looking at people that are mostly fans of this stuff writing about it, so they're really excited about it. If you're trying to critically look at it or analyze it or try to understand what it's all about or what it means, it's really not that kind of world for you. So from now on, most of the stuff that I'm going to be saying could potentially be hearsay. It's stuff that I've read, and it's stuff that I've gently confirmed. A lot of this is based on my experiences of the material, some of the fucking things that I've learned. Ooh boy. So there might not be a lot of information about some of these in the future. Just keep that in mind as I go. Vomit, Enema, Ecstasy, Volume 1 and 2. Alright, so this is the holy grail of vomit porn. If Squirmfest is the holy grail of worm porn, this is the holy grail of the other thing. So as I said, I have a big old problem with this. Like, I don't like it. I don't need to tell you anything more than what the title has already told you about Vomit, Enema, Ecstasy, Volume 1 and 2. My question, I guess, is just, you have a vomit enema, right? You go down to the clinic, you get yourself a vomit enema, and you're like, thank you, sis, I need that enema. And then you go back for Volume 2? Are you fucking kidding me? Imagine that. Imagine that. Imagine making the holy grail of puke porn and then going, I think it's time to double dip. I want to get back into that sweet, sweet puke money. Anyway, I don't really need to tell you anymore. I'm mostly just shit posting about it, but yeah, people vomit, they do an enema. twice. Volume 1 and 2. You'll love it. Kuso Limitless. All right, so I looked on the internet for a pretty long time about this, and I will admit that the film Kuso, which is directed by Flying Lotus, is not the most disgusting movie anyone's ever made. Like, it is not even close to as bad as Vomit Into My Ecstasy, or Squirmfest, or Guso Milk, or Ginky Ginky, which we haven't even gotten to. So I don't think it's Kuso. I think it's something called Kuso Limitless, which sounds, as I've looked into it, a lot like scat porn. So it's probably some kind of crazy scat porn. I don't know what the bit is. I don't know what the one little thing is about it that makes it special. All I know is that it's gross and there's poop. There's gross and there's poop. KT Trilogy. I could not find anything about this. And maybe I didn't look hard enough, but I couldn't find anything about this. I don't know exactly what that stands for, but I assume it means kill and torture. That's what people be doing on this list. But it's also a porn thing, so maybe it's not that. Maybe it's a porn thing. The Motel Files. Okay, sister, so this one's another one of those big triggering ones. It's a big old BDSM thing, and some of it is questionably consensual. I think seems to be the bit, but also supposedly, and I could be wrong. Again, a lot of this is hearsay. Supposedly, this is where the notable video came from, where a woman, I believe it's a woman, has a massively prolapsed butt, and then a guy runs up and ejaculates on the prolapsed butt, and you're like, wow, amazing. I believe this video, that particular aspect of the Motel Files, is currently being used in different like websites to shock people all the time as kind of like a pop-up. Whatever, I guess. Ginky Ginky. All right, get out of here, Strawberry. I don't want you to know about this. So Ginky Ginky has a reputation, so you should probably already know about it. There are videos, and if you don't want to watch the videos, what are you doing here? Because I'm going to talk about it. So Ginky Ginky is basically fish porn. But it's not just fish porn. It's fish BDSM and fish shit. It's some fish shit. You know, some people, they got a foot fetish, right? They see foot and they're just like, I gotta touch that foot, you know, and they get really horny for the foot. Some people are like that with fishies. Some people see a fishy and they're like, I want to fuck that fish. Now, I don't think anybody literally with their dick fucks a fish in this series, but I could be wrong. Maybe they do. You know, I wouldn't put it past them. What am I fucking talking about? So Ginky Ginky is fucking abhorrent. It's a woman is beaten with a fish for like a long period of time, and then she has like there's like fish guts, and those are just shoved everywhere. They also put live eels into a person, and then they squirm around inside them. There's another time where they put an octopus inside a lady. Why did they put an octopus inside a lady? It's okay, because it seems like this is kind of like people are into it, like they like it. And I know this because apparently it's pretty common in Ginky Ginky films to just cut to a shot of people ejaculating on fish. I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to make you imagine that. But don't worry. In all of these Japanese sort of like absolutely fuck horrible things that are like pornographic and terrible, there are no genitals to worry about because they are all blurred. So don't worry, you're not gonna see any dirty pee-pees. Only people getting their absolute shit fucked and wrecked by fish, and by an octopus, and by guts of fish. Saddest Scream, Volume 1 to 5. I think this is another one of those things where it's on the list mostly because it's obscure. It's not necessarily something that's particularly special, but it does find its way onto the list because, like, not a lot of people have heard of it, and it is quite an entry into this particular field. It's a lot of sadistic stuff, it's a lot of faux snuff, it's a lot of like BDSM porn and torture stuff. You've seen stuff like this. It's guinea pig but with porn. Tumbling Doll of Flesh is often compared to this a lot, and I think that's because of the mixture between porn and snuff. They're not always killing people, sometimes they're having sex. Running parallel between the constants of having sex and killing people is sort of where this particular series becomes way worse than a lot of other ones. No Vaseline, the great porn swindle. Everything I looked up about this, it was just extreme BDSM and scat porn, and it's mostly notable because it's named that, but it isn't really anything all that different from what we've already experienced. Matter of fact, it just marries really good with this whole particular part of the iceberg because it's just more of that. It's just more of the same. If you've seen scat and BDSM stuff, well, you've probably seen at least some of this. Yeah, so scat BDSM porn, and it's mildly effective. Some people have a problem with it. We are on the last part, and thank God in heaven. I tell you what, I can't wait till this is over so that I can take a shower, and then after I take a shower, I'm gonna think of like 10 video ideas that don't have anything to do with scat porn, and I'm gonna make those videos next. Wouldn't that be nice to make those and not the scat porn? Imocos Sexualis Dium Cavallo. So this is a film about how someone used the beautiful, wonderful body that Mother Nature or God or whoever blessed upon you to fuck a donkey. That was a long way to say that a woman fucks a donkey, but a woman super fucks a donkey. And apparently there's like this B plot in the movie where a guy goes out and just gives AIDS to a bunch of people. Luckily, if you're tired of seeing someone fuck a donkey, it'll just cut straight to someone giving somebody AIDS. So that's good. We are at the bottom of the list. And I know, okay, so first is tragedy, then is farce, right? Now we're at the end, and it's kind of a joke now to me. It's like, it's so horrible at this point that it's like on another plane of existence as far as like fucked up things go. And honestly, fucking a donkey is pretty spicy. That's a fiery activity. Fetus Munchers 1 and 2. Okay, so no one online wants to talk about these. Like, I can't seem to find anybody openly willing to admit that they've watched this, and I have a feeling that that has something to do with there being some problem with this. Like, people don't like it, and when people make reviews of it or publish it, it seems to get taken down a lot. And I don't think it's getting taken down by the creators. I think it's getting taken down by websites that don't want to host whatever this is. From what I saw, it's just some gore stuff. There's some real gore in there too, and a lot of it's like porn stuff. It's kind of a mixtape, but it's really rare and very shocking. And also something you'll realize as we go along too is that some of this stuff, it's actually easier to see this stuff than to actually find people giving it thoughtful criticism or talking about what the contents of this thing is. Don't be tempted, if there isn't good journalism about this stuff, to just go diving in unless you really feel like you can handle it. And something about Fetus Munchers 1 and 2 sounds like I'm not going to have a great time with this one. And it's okay because I couldn't find it anyway. Snuff R73. So this one is a rabbit hole. There's a lot of discussion about this particular one and a lot of debate about how bad this thing is, where you can get it, and what exactly is in it. So there's like 3 or 4 different versions of this. There's one on the surface web that people talk about a lot, like supposedly one on the deep web you can go buy from a guy on the deep web, but supposedly people have purchased it and have watched it, and because they've watched it, they can clearly say without any hesitation that there's no actual CP in it. People have been talking about this one in particular as being an illegal film with CP in it. It might be illegal somewhere. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with this one. And maybe there is a version somewhere in the world that has CP in it. But supposedly the readily available version that people are watching of this does not have CP in it. However, it does have a ton of footage of a bunch of like bombed out children. So instead of seeing, CP related shit, instead you're seeing bombed out children. Not any better, really. I still probably wouldn't seek this one out, as it is a mixtape of some of the worst shit that you can see in the world. And I do really want to make a distinction here. We have completely left the world of narrative behind. Now we are mostly talking about mixtape films. And what a mixtape film is basically somebody edits together a big sequence of different clips of shit that people probably don't want to see or know about, and then they have to endure in real time. So it's kind of an endurance test on how much nihilism you can handle, or how much, like, gross porn you can handle. Snuff R73 is supposedly one of the worst ones of that. It's one of the worst mixtape films. Also, supposedly the CP version is called the Vorsch Cut, I believe, and it is supposedly an urban legend. Registreto Fite 3. This is a mixtape with over 100 clips in it. And the clips are like gore, animal shit, people getting fucked up, people doing fucked up stuff. A lot of animal shit, a lot of porn gore in this one. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say other than, like, it's 100 clips, and some of them are things that you'll see in some of these other ones. Some of them are unique and their own, so it ends up at the very bottom of the list. But apparently, yeah, mixtape movie, probably bad to see. Fubar. Okay, so this is notably considered to be one of the worst compilations, like one of the worst mixtape movies. It's another one of those mixtape films filled with real death, gore, violence, all the classics. But this one supposedly has a weird sense of humor in that sometimes it just cuts to porn that's just fucking hilarious. But also, I do believe there's like just some of the worst like live leak kind of shit that you can possibly see. Some of the worst and so the bit is, it's not necessarily illegal, and there is like statute of limitations on some of this stuff, and some of this stuff is, how are you going to get rid of it? Like, if it's spread around this much, like, how could law enforcement possibly remove it from the entire internet? If they do go missing, there's always like a weird conspiracy about whether or not law enforcement removed it, but also a lot of this stuff is pretty widely going to get you banned from most places for posting it. Yeah, I mean, it's a big collection of a bunch of that stuff. And if that's your vibe, then there you go. And if it's not your vibe, have you considered watching Godzilla vs. King Kong? MD Pope 1 through 3. Alright, so this is like considered to be one of the worst ones. There's like 63 clips in this, I think. In the first one, at least. You know, people being burned alive. There are people being killed in accidents. MD Pope stands for the most disturbed person on planet Earth. And, you know, to be honest with you, the cinema gore person that I hear about sure does seem like the type. I cannot imagine being the editor on MD Pope. Imagine clocking the at least 5 or 6 hours it took to whip this sumbitch together, right? Like, that would have taken at least a day. You don't hear about any of our classic editors working on stuff like that, do we? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people consider this one to be the current holy grail of holy fucking shit, as far as really bad stuff goes. There are many, many, many holy grails of holy fucking shit, depending on which kind of holy fucking shit you're looking for. It's kind of a wide variety as far as that stuff goes. Orgish Collection. Okay, so this is another mixtape bit, and it's a collection of some of the worst shit that was ever on Orgish, which was like a place where people commonly posted a lot of really despicable videos that you probably don't want to watch. This website, I believe, has been rebranded into LiveLeak. I think Orgish is mostly just some of the classics that you'd see on LiveLeak. So a lot of beheadings, a lot of cartel killings, gore, violence, everything like that. Is porn. It's all in there. And then Porn Gore 1 and 2 is just, mixtape collection of some of the worst porn gore that exists that you have to endure. Most of it's pretty bad. I feel like I see the finish line, and it's right down there, and all I have to do is stop talking about this particular part of the iceberg. So here's the iceberg again. We have talked about every single thing on this iceberg, and I think by this point, genuinely, you and I have grown as people, and we now know about a lot of things that we didn't previously know about the world, and about things people did with their bodies, and with their souls and their spirits, and with their time on Earth. So there it is. We have done it. Wow. I wish I could say that I was finished. I wish I could say that I was done, but I'm not. I'm now going to quickly, briefly tell you about a couple of the things that you can watch that are involved in these particular things, like these collections specifically, that you should know about. Like, me telling you about these absolutely horrible things might spare you some grief in the future. So understand that I don't take a lot of pleasure in telling you about these next couple of things, but I feel like I need to so that you're aware of them. Especially if you're going to be watching like MD Pope or something like that, because this stuff is in there. It's all in there. I would like to stress one more time that all of this stuff is around. You can see it. It's not hard to find. The Mr. Hands video. Yeah, Mr. Hands is a guy who had sex with a horse and died. His buddy filmed that. And that is in a lot of mixtapes. 3 Guys, 1 Hammer. 3 guys and a hammer kill some people. You get to watch that, and it's real. It's a bummer, and it sucks. And I can't stress to you enough that this stuff fucking sucks. 1 lunatic, 1 ice pick. So, Luca Magnotta is a serial killer who killed someone and filmed it and put it on LiveLeak. It's a very surreal video. It's a very surreal video. This man also killed a lot of cats, and horrifying, terrible. There's a documentary all about it. You should learn about that. It's called Don't Fuck with Cats. But yeah, he did super murder someone and eat them, and then mailed parts of their body to different political groups. Smashing videos. I don't like this. I don't like talking about this one because this one fucking really upsets everybody on Earth. There is a subsect of pornography that is all about hot women smashing living animals with their asses. And then if their asses don't kill them, then they kill them with their high heels. Funky Town. Okay, so Funky Town is a horrible, horrible cartel murder scene. And the reason it's called Funky Town is because in the background of the murder, you can hear the song Funky Town playing. Yeah, it's really bad. I don't want to tell you anymore. Toolbox Murders tape. So the Toolbox Murders, notably one of the Toolbox Murderers recorded what he was doing to a victim. He recorded the torture of this victim who was basically begging to die. It's just the most upsetting audio you can hear, and there's so much footage of people hearing this audio and then running from the room, like just trying to get away from the concept of the audio. It's really, really fucking bad, and they currently, I believe, use it to desensitize people in the FBI. So, bad fucking audio. Don't look that one up. After School Special. So supposedly this one is about some guy murdering children with a knife. The Bjork Stalker. So Bjork had a stalker, and apparently at one point the stalker got very infuriated that Bjork started dating Dennis Rodman. He decided to mail her a bomb and kill her, but she didn't get the bomb. Her maid or someone close to her got the bomb, and it killed them. Bjork was spared from that. She did, I believe, catch him in her house once. But yeah, he did kill himself and filmed the entire process of him deciding to do this, all because she decided to date Dennis Rodman. Misogyny is so stupid. Ronnie McNutt. Okay, so this one's a recent thing that's going around a lot. I don't like talking about it, but it's one that I feel like I have to mention so that you are aware of it. Basically, there's this video of a guy blowing his head off with a shotgun, and it's horrible. A while back, people were getting in hot water for editing it into TikToks. So there'd just be a regular TikTok going, and you'd be like, oh, it's a TikTok. And then all of a sudden it would cut to that happening. What a bunch of assholes. And that will do it for now. I hate my fucking job. Okay, so let's decompress here real quick. It's not like there is information on Earth that upon knowing it is just going to break your brain and kill you or something, or make you not want to live anymore. These sorts of things have a tendency to color your existence. That is to say that it's changing the way that you approach reality. Easy to look at this and fall down this rabbit hole and to learn about all these things and think, oh my God, I'm going to have an existential crisis like this, especially at the bottom rungs of this sorts of things. Now is a great time for us all to remember that our existence is being colored by the things that we're experiencing. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that is entirely that existence, but rather the colors we're currently seeing it through. If this bothers you, then I recommend not doing this anymore, or taking a break, or going out and seeing some friends. Call your family, call your friends. There's a whole world out there, and it's hard as shit. I'm not going to say it isn't hard as shit. It's hard as shit, and it's mean, and nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody. If anything, I think something like this is a great unifying factor. Everybody can unanimously look at this iceberg and say, wow, fuck all of that. And I kind of think it's a great thing that we all unanimously are watching this or making this right now or talking about this, and we're all simultaneously going, wow, fuck that. A lot of people don't want humanity to be this. We want to be better than this. We have to remember that this is unfortunately a part of our existence. This is a color palette. In the same way that anything can color your existence, so can this. So it's important to remember all the other colors. And unfortunately, while some of these things I guess are kind of worth celebrating, maybe some of them, yeah, sure. Some of them are achievements of some kind, but for the most part, a lot of these are kind of bad movies. A lot of these are not great, and I'm sure that if somebody had the ability to make something that was good and uplifting and meant something to humanity, they would probably doing that. I think most people would rather be doing that than this. But now you know about this, and that implicates you. That implicates you in the same way that it implicates me. If anything, it means that we have to live our lives better. Something to remember when everything is terrible and you feel like a horrible person and you feel like the world hates you, to remember that you have not even scratched the surface on how bad a person can be.